Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Accra steps in to look after its own. Hundreds of our Ghanaians caught up in xenophobic attacks in South Africa are set to be evacuated. Anti-immigration protests there have strained relations between local and foreign communities. Also, as the crucial legislative elections in Cape Verde approach, challenges resurface. The biggest of all, water. The archipelago's one of the world's countries with the lowest rainfall, and the vital resource is not only scarce, but increasingly expensive. And up to 60,000 Sudanese war refugees live in the southern Libyan city of Kufra. Many children forced to stop school by a brutal war that erupted in their homeland in 2023. Some have started to go back to classes set up by Libyan authorities. The conditions can sometimes be challenging. But first, Ghana has started repatriating nationals caught up in xenophobic violence in South Africa. 300 Ghanaians have registered with their embassy asking for help for being sent home amidst an uptick in anti-immigrant protests and alleged assaults and intimidation of other African nationals in South Africa. Our Justice Baidu brings us more from Ghana.
At least 200 Ghanaians are said to have reported cases of by force takeover of their businesses and harassment in South Africa, especially within the KwaZulu-Natal area. The government of Ghana will be bearing the cost of this repatriation, including those who do not currently have the required paperwork to travel. President John Dramani Mahama this week granted approval for the Foreign Affairs Ministry to begin the process with around 300 persons living in South Africa. According to Ghana's envoy in South Africa, the process will start by focusing on those who have been specifically targeted in the widespread violence. The Ghana embassy in South Africa has continuously released statements last week and this week warning Ghanaians to stay indoors and stay away from places where protests are happening, especially this week. The latest wave of xenophobic attacks in South Africa started at the beginning of April 2026 when protests broke out in several parts of the country demanding for jobs for South Africans.
Justice Baidu there for us. Now, Congolese soldiers have continued to patrol towns in the Ruzizi Plain in the east of DR Congo after M23 rebels' withdrawal from several positions in South Kivu province earlier this week. The pullback, which is one of the biggest shifts in the conflict since it flared up with an M23 offensive early last year, has followed a renewed diplomatic push from African mediators, Qatar and the US for a negotiated end to the fighting. Meanwhile, on the ground, communities on the front line of the power struggles are asking for support in dealing with the aftermath of the rebels' hold over their towns.
Today, with the arrival of the loyalist forces and the presence of the authorities, the town has mobilized and several residents have returned. We appeal to the Congolese government and to partners to come to the aid of the population, which remains unstable until now, because some residents have seen their belongings looted and several houses have been destroyed.
Look, now at some news in brief. The UN's rights chief wants to see independent investigations into the reported killing of dozens of people in northern Nigeria by soldiers over the weekend. The army is accused of having killed at least 100 by bombing a crowded market in northwestern Zamfara state. The military's accused of recklessness with civilian lives as they target extremist and criminal gangs. Also, it's been a tough week for people living in Moroni. Schools, shops and public services were shut down this week as a transport strike over fuel price increases took hold in the Comoros capital. 7 union members were reportedly arrested after the strikes beginning on Monday in response to the government raising diesel prices by 46% and gas prices by 35%. Cameroon says that it's turned up nearly 200 illegal gold mining companies operating in the centre and east of the country, most reportedly foreign-owned. An investigation into the sector began at the start of the year after officials noticed a huge disparity between the official gold export figures and the much higher import figures reported abroad. The Mines Ministry says that many of the companies uncovered are run by Chinese nationals. Now, as the crucial legislative elections in Cape Verde head towards us, the major challenge on many voters' minds is water. The archipelago is ranked amongst the 15 countries with the lowest rainfall in the world, and the vital resource is not only scarce, but expensive, as our Caitlin Kelly tells us.
Contrary to what its name suggests, Cape Verde is not always a lush archipelago. For farmers on the island of Santiago, maintaining a green plot of land can be a financial burden.
We've always had problems with water, and it's caused many conflicts. We had a debt of more than 50,000 euros to the national water company here.
Scarcity pushes up the price of water. One of 15 countries in the world with the lowest rainfall, Cape Verde's water supply comes from desalination plants or rare wells, forcing many to adapt.
Many farmers have installed drip irrigation. This way we use 75% less water than with the old method.
In some of the capital's poorest neighbourhoods, mains water doesn't reach kitchens and bathrooms, so it's supplied by trucks from private companies.
I call these trucks to come here, and then I buy water by the ton. But regularly there are breakdowns, or the truck cannot pass. And then I have to go fetch water on foot, from farther away.
For these expanding neighbourhoods, connecting residents is logistically challenging and expensive. Water has been one issue on the diaspora's agenda, who send a significant amount of aid back to the archipelago every year.
The engagement of the French diaspora through associations and the Federation allows action here. There's also support from water agencies, which we are fortunate to have in France, and which can operate internationally.
30% of Cape Verde's population live without a connection to running water, an issue that remains, for this election period, a major challenge and topic of conversation.
Well, up to 60,000 Sudanese war refugees now live in the southern Libyan city of Kufra. Many are children who were forced to stop going to school by the war that erupted in their homeland in 2023. Some have been going back to classes set up by Libyan authorities. Our team reports.
On an afternoon a few kilometers from refugee camps in Kufra, in this school, Sudanese children follow their own country's curriculum with Suad, a refugee who arrived in Libya a year ago.
I was a teacher of all subjects, Arabic, English, sports. Here I had 6 months without work. Then we got a little bit of work. We'd hoped to work, but there wasn't any job. There was no Sudanese school, only Libyan ones. We didn't have books either, but now we have this school, thank God.
She applied for a work permit along with 20 other teachers. She earns a salary of 15 Libyan dinars per class and teaches many grades at the same time.
In Sudan, I used to work with both younger and older students, mostly 6th, 7th and 8th graders. But here I work with primary school because it's difficult to find teachers for them. They're younger, but I'm happy to have the opportunity.
Children can go to school in the afternoon after Libyan students finish, and demand is high. For this school alone, there were 900 enrollment applications. Some families pay for education, teacher salaries, others get free tuition. But the situation is still difficult for women in the refugee camps, especially those with many kids.
We face hurdles with housing, food, work, education. Each child's education costs 500 dinar a year. I have 5 kids, so I need almost 2,500 Libyan dinar per year. We can't pay so much. Also, there's the cost of transportation, 5 to 10 dinar.
Kufra's city government made 3 schools available to Sudanese, but funding remains a problem. Another is the lack of textbooks and supplies. Some of these schools for refugee children have also been set up in Misrata in the west of the country.
I cannot. They are too cute. Oh, I'm so glad that they're getting to get back to school. Well, finally, though, for our bulletin, we head to Kinshasa, where orphaned bonobos who lost their parents to poaching are being nurtured by conservationists, hoping to boost their whole species' dwindling numbers. The primates are native to DRC, but are at risk of extinction after decades of hunting. Laura Bernstecker talks us through.
Sleeping soundly in the arms of his caregiver, this baby bonobo is enjoying a second lease on life at a sanctuary on the outskirts of Kinshasa. The Lola Ya Bonobo facility is dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating these orphaned primates whose parents were often captured or killed by poachers. Micheline and Zonzi spent the past 2 decades caring for these animals.
The bonobos are often stressed because their mothers were killed by poachers. When they arrive, they need reassurance. They need to be in our arms to feel safe, like children who have lost their parents.
Bonobos share 99% of their DNA with humans, making them our closest living relatives, along with chimpanzees. Native to the DRC, their numbers have plummeted drastically in recent years, from an estimated 100,000 in the 1980s to less than 20,000 today. And despite being classified as an endangered species on the brink of extinction, they are still regularly being hunted for their meat.
Bonobos aren't the only victims of poaching. Several animals are being hunted. But the problem with bonobos is that they don't exist anywhere else. They're only found in the DRC. That's why their numbers are dropping significantly.
Beyond caring for these great apes, staff at the sanctuary is also hoping to raise awareness on the dangers of poaching. Yet despite their efforts, as well as growing legal protection for bonobos and other endangered animals, bushmeat is still being openly sold in street markets around Kinshasa.
That is all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us, though, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care. Thanks, friends.